topic was the topic for that particular cafe was on how air and space flight are becoming more popular and popular. And the event was timely after the jump of Felix from the edge of space. But we also featured a live flight of a small aeroplane that is developed for amateurs. We have a couple of videos on both of them. So the event brought scientists on one hand and undergrads from AUC and members of the general public to talk and to test these new gadgets because flying has been a dream since since the first man, and it is very interesting to see how this had developed, how this practice that we used to think it is limited to the people who work in this area. It's becoming more and more accessible. NASA is developing a multitude of apps that you use on your phone, on your iPad, so that you can get a sense how to fly a spaceship. One of them is Rocket Science 101, how rocket science is all about and how kids and youth can really get a taste. This is important part of exciting interest about science and technology and keeping people thinking of the cutting edge and how can we leap forward.
So what about amateurs? What kind of knowledge do they need to basically take a trip into, space or
well, partly, as Dr. Alaa was saying, it's about how do you engage them at a young age for whichever direction they're going in. For example, if you talk to people who started working in the early years of the physics program or something like that, a lot of them, when they talk about their childhood or what got them interested in science or space, they'll talk about being able to build things, and
You've
back
also
in
got
those...
the video of Felix
right.
Going up into the stratosphere.
Right. But they'll talk about how, of course, back in that age, it was the era of ham radios. They were playing with ham radios or model rockets or something like that. But there has to being able to actually do something, not just either sit and listen to a lecture about it or watch where there's a handful of people in a government-sponsored program, the National Space Program or something like that. If there's something that you can do which could take you in a lot of directions, it could be engineering, it could be different types of climate science now related to space science, or it could be actual space flight. But getting people on different paths that lead in that direction. And then, as we're watching the video of Felix's jump, I mean, the direction that things are going now is that going into space is still very expensive. But on the other hand, there are a lot of different ways to do it. And that's why you have a number of different private companies springing up that are trying different things. And it's not an either-or thing. NASA, as part of its vision, has said, okay, we want a lot of the space flight that's going to the International Space Station and back now to be handled by private companies. So NASA will focus on things like the future space telescopes, like the Curiosity rover on Mars. But different private companies can be involved in things like, as recently, launching a ship of cargo to the space station and then bringing back scientific samples from there. So all of this, and that just came back to Earth like a week and a half ago. So all of these things, again, it means that there's lots of different paths into things associated.
So in a few years, we're probably going to end up going to space, like we're taking a flight from Egypt to the States, for instance.
Can we?
Well, I don't think we're yet at the place where, there's a long weekend coming up, so do I want to spend a few £100s to go to Hurghada or to outer space? We're not there yet. We're not going to be there for a while.
The interesting thing is you can have your own plane and you can go to whatever part of Egypt.
You see the Jetsons sort of style.
In your own plane, and that would be very nice with the traffic jams that we are.
Yes.
I wish that could happen. I wish. I wanted to talk to you about the most famous or the most recent amateur flights into space.
Well, the recent jump by Felix Baumgartner is sort of, it's an extension of a number of things, and a lot of trajectories that have been going in this direction. You look back and say the 80s and 90s, and people were working on long-duration balloon flights. So not just how high you can go, but how long you can
can stay
fly.
up there.
You know, can you stay up there to make an entire circuit of the globe to, eventually? This was the next stage of that. But it's also, I mean, partly, obviously, it's you know, it's a challenge. It's like climbing Mount Everest or something like that. But there's also scientific things to be gleaned in terms of survival at that height. And again, if we're going into a direction where the private sector is more involved in certain pieces of spaceflight, you need to start working on equipment. You need to start working on survivability if something goes wrong. Is it possible to escape from a damaged craft at high altitude and come back down to Earth? So the record that Felix was breaking was initially held by someone who had been doing tests for the Navy in terms of is it possible to bail out at high altitudes and still survive. In this case, this is about going even higher than planes. This is about going to sort of the lower boundaries of outer space. And, you know, as was discussed in the programs about it, one of the medical officers, the chief medical officer on the jump, was someone who had lost his wife in the space shuttle accident, the one that broke apart as it was re-entering the atmosphere. And so he obviously has a very personal interest in survivability of astronauts trying to get out of damaged spacecraft. So again,
it's scary and exciting at the same time.
It's scary and exciting.
People are kind of more interested in seeing Felix sort of, you know, will he live or not? Is he going to fall flat on his face?
There's the drama. There's the drama. There's the drama
action.
and the action and you know, and that amazing camera shot when you're looking just directly over his head, you know, down at the Earth and saying, okay, was this really a good idea? You're imagining what's going through his mind.
Playing it safe is also key. He didn't go in the first attempt because of the weather and so on. So planning is key, and making sure that safety is number one. This is something that goes hand in hand with the latest technology that he was using.
And how do you think all of this, I mean, you guys are trying to reach to the public and talk to them not in big scientific terms, but so that they understand what's going on. How does this awareness kind of enhance and benefit the regular, general public?
One thing is if they can have access, if they can get a hold on the technology. And we have a video on the small airplane that we actually flew on that day. So they can own now this piece of gadget, and they can actually fly it with their iPhone or with their iPad. So it is becoming an area of what we call citizen science. Citizen science, where you can acquire a scientific tool and you can do a lot with it. You can gather data, you can do some activities that would be of somehow scientific nature, but at the same time you are not the white coat typical scientist. You can be an artist, you can be of any walks of life, but at the same time you can have access, and of course it opens up the idea of blending science and culture, and space tourism and eco-tourism is also another aspect of, or one of the ways that you can really bring people from various backgrounds and talk about scientific topics, and especially astro and space.
Just out of curiosity, how expensive are these trips?
Which ones? So
let's talk about Felix, for example.
Yeah.
Well, actually, my understanding is that I don't think Red Bull has ever said exactly how much they spent.
It looks like a lot of
but
money.
it's quite high.
Yeah, it looks like
It's. I mean, again, if you compare that to, for example, a number of very wealthy people have purchased training and trips on Russian spacecraft to the space station and back, or something like that. I forget exactly how much they paid, but I think it was in the area of like $20 million or something.
But there is a lower ticket, 100,000 US dollar. This gives you a seat on the zero-G plane that goes to the outer space, so that you feel weightlessness. So there is hope.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, the breakfast show is actually over. So I'd like to thank you so much for joining us on the breakfast show, Dr. Alaa Ibrahim and Karl Gale. Thank you so much for
And
joining us this
congratulations
morning.
for the Democrats. I know
Yes.
you voted for Obama.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Oh, this wraps up our show for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please stay tuned. Don't forget to watch us again tomorrow and every other day from 8:30 to 10 with more on The Breakfast Show. Have a good day.